Continuing with chapter 4, there's just two slides on what affects weathering and how fast it happens, so the rate of weathering. So advanced mechanical weathering aids in chemical weathering by increasing the surface area. We mentioned that earlier. So there are some important factors that could affect the rate at which this happens. So you could have rock characteristics, so the mineral composition and solubility. So how easily is it soluble in water? Also, different minerals break apart at different rates. So depending on the fracture rates, you could have an increase or decrease in weathering. And also physical features. If it's easily break apartable, I don't know if that's a word, but it could easily be broken apart, then that could affect it as well. The climate in the region is a big factor as well. If you have a very cold region or a region where it fluctuates between warm and cold temperatures, you can have a lot of frontal wedging happening. So the temperature and moisture are critical in areas as well. And then chemical weathering is most effective where you have warm temperatures and also abundant moisture, because the warm temperatures are going to increase any chemical reaction for the most part. So if you have a lot of water dissolving different materials, the rate at which that dissolving happens will increase if you have warmer temperatures. There's also differential weathering, so this is just caused by variations in the composition of the rock near where the weathering is occurring, and this will create unusual or spectacular rock formations. So this is just a picture of an example of weathering. So the granite headstone on the left still looks fresh, but then the one on the right is made out of marble, and since marble is calcite rich, it could easily be weathered compared to granite. So depending on what the type of material it is, you'll have different weathering. Also, this is just an example of differential weathering where you have this really big pillar still standing. But so for whatever reason, this area was not affected by whatever else happened in that region, and you have some smaller versions of this same thing. Just kind of interesting picture to illustrate the result of differential weathering. Okay, the remainder of this lecture is going to be about soil. You probably didn't think soil was going to be as complicated as chapter 4 makes it out to be. So it's actually really interesting because soil is a very, very important interface between essentially plant growth and the earth. Without soil, we would not be able to have plants growing at all. So it's very important. So a lot of these slides are going to dig deep into how soil is important for the Earth's entire system. So soil is just basically a combination of water and air with mineral matter. And then in between there, you're also going to have some organic matter in the soil as well. But for the most part, it's minerals, air, and water. You also have something that's defined on this slide called regolith. This is just rock and mineral fragments that help support the growth of plants. So that's also a part of the soil that would fall into the mineral matter portion of this pie chart. So soil texture and structure. So the texture just refers to the proportions of different sized particles that are in the soil. So you could have sand, which would be a large size, so you actually can feel the different sized particles if you were to pick it up in your hand. And then it decreases in size to silt, and then finally clay is the smallest size. So loam would be a mixture of all three sizes of soil. And this is the one that's best suited for plant life. So this is just a chart showing you the different types of soil depending on the percentage of particle-sized pieces in that piece of soil. So you have silt, clay, and sand, where loam is the best suited for plant life. You also have structure. So there's soil particles clumped together to give soil its structure. So there's four basic types: platy, prismatic, blocky, and spheroidal. Make sure you know what the four differences between those by reading the chapter. All right, so there are some controls for soil formation. So there's some parent material. So this is some rock material or mineral material that's residual in the Earth's crust, and it's essentially in the bedrock. So this is going to be what's below the soil. It's also could be transported soil, which is the parent material has been carried from elsewhere and then deposited in that region, most likely creating a sedimentary rock parent material. Time is also very important in the control of soil. So time is important in all geologic processes, obviously, but the amount of time to evolve varies for different types of soils. Climate, so the amount of the temperature changes in that region are important, the amount of moisture in that region, and also the plants and animals that are near that soil. So organisms influence the soil's physical and chemical properties, and they also furnish organic matter to the soil. Slope is also another important factor in soil formation. So the bigger angled slope of a landmass, the more poorly developed the soil is going to be, because gravity is basically going to pull all of the transported materials to that location down farther. So when you have a high sloped area region, the soil is not going to be that great. Also, the orientation is important as well to affect the soil temperature and moisture. All right, so just an example of some of the things I just mentioned before. Here's where you have no soil development, where you have a very steep angle. Essentially, you're just going to have a rock formation, no actual soil. All the actual transporter material is going to fall down the slope eventually into this valley region. So you have almost no soil development here, and then very poor soil development along the gradual edges of the slope. Same thing on this side. You're going to have a thinner soil where you have this slope from a higher elevation to a lower elevation. And then eventually you have all of these deposits that happen in the valley region. You're essentially going to have a pretty good region with pretty healthy soil. The same thing at the very top region here, where you have a flat terrain. The soil is allowed to develop over time, and this becomes a thicker, more farmable type soil. All right, the soil profile. So soil forming processes operate from the surface downward. All right, so just gravity is basically going to pull some of these soil pieces downward, creating different levels. So there are different horizons or layers of soil. So the O layer is full of organic matter. The A layer, or A horizon, is organic and mineral matter. The E horizon is little organic matter, and this is due to alluviation and leaching. And then B is called the zone of accumulation. And then finally C is just partially altered parent material. Anything underneath C is essentially your parent material that's in your bedrock. So this is a great picture illustrating these things. So we'll start from the bottom. So finally you have your unweathered parent material, whatever that may be. Then you have your C horizon where weathering is occurring and you're kind of transitioning into the soil material. And then finally your lowest layer here is your zone of accumulation. All right, so this is where all the stuff from above is transported down below. It can't really go any lower than the B horizon. Then you have your E horizon. This is your zone of alluviation and leaching. And then your A material, you have minerals mixed with some organic material. And then finally, at the very top, you have your O horizon, or your organic horizon. So we call everything from the O horizon to the B horizon what we call as true soil. And then topsoil is your O and A together. So if you were going to be planting a tree or planting something in a garden, you could put topsoil down and hopefully that layer sticks, because that's going to be where most all of your organic matter is going to be located. All right, so this is just a picture contrasting different types of soil profiles for different regions. So the one on the left is in Puerto Rico, which has a very different climate than the climate on the right, which is a picture from South Dakota. So you could basically see all of the levels. You have your organic level, your A level, your leaching level, and then your C level here. All right, so you can also classify soils. So there is a system for classifying soil in the United States, and it's called soil taxonomy. So it emphasizes the physical and chemical properties of the soil profile, and the names of the soil units are combinations of syllables of Latin and Greek origin. All right, so there are global soil regions. You don't really have to worry about these too much, but just understand that there's a whole field of earth science devoted to soil, and I bet you never knew that before. So soil erosion. So again, this is a type of weathering process where you're actually changing the composition of different materials. So you can think of soil erosion as essentially the recycling of earth materials at the surface. So the natural rates of erosion depend on a few things. Again, the soil characteristics themselves, the climate in the region, so the temperature and moisture, the slope of the soil, and also the type of vegetation and organic plant life that's being planted or that exists already in the soil. So water erosion. So believe it or not, raindrops dislodge soil particles and sometimes could be splashed over a meter away from where the splash occurs, which is pretty interesting. And flowing water can also carry soil away, and 2/3 of all U.S. soil erosion is due to water erosion. And then wind erosion, I think that's obvious. So this occurs when the soil is really dry and wind can actually move the different particles around quite easily. And this happens a lot in arid or desert regions too of the United States and anywhere in the world. So here's just some pictures of soil erosion and where sedimentation can cause. So you have a reservoir to fill sediment, contamination by pesticides and fertilizers. So these are just some pictorial examples of different types of soil erosion that could occur due to climate changes and also due to moving water. So you can't control soil erosion. So you can leave steep slopes undisturbed. You could terrace crop planting, and there's going to be a picture showing you that in a second. You could have grassed waterways, and you can also have trees to stop wind erosion from happening. So this is an example of plateauing different crops. So you're going to see that you have levels here and then separating. Each level are hay. So this would stop water from pushing the soil away. So this is just a way to keep your soil in place and keep it healthy. And this is an example of a grassed waterway. So all the water in this region would essentially coalesce into this region and then flow downward with gravity down this slope as opposed to eroding away the soil on either side.